my friend. Welcome to the Battle for the Mind Ministries. I'm your host, Kendall Walker. If it's your first time here, it's a pleasure. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the little bell and subscribing. This ministry is dedicated to teaching the Bible, theology, apologetics, answering frequently asked questions, and much, much more. And best of all, it's all Bible-based. Hello, my friend, and welcome to Battle for the Mind Ministries. I've had a number of people ask me, what do I do? How do I study the Bible? I'm a new Christian. What do I do from this point? Well, the whole purpose of this particular series is to answer that very question. In fact, I've entitled this, I'm a new Christian, now what? I'm a new Christian, now what? And what I'm hoping to do is create a series of Bible studies and theological studies that deal with specific topics that were presented to me both prior to Bible college and seminary, but in conjunction with all of that, so you have a firm foundation of where to go as a young believer. So we're going to begin today with, how does God speak to man? How does God speak to man? And I'm hoping that throughout these next several weeks, months, years, that we'll be able to walk through all the major doctrines of the Bible, various topics of the Bible, so you become really grounded in the Word of God. Having said that, let's dive in. Which brings us to point number 2 out of our 3 points. Point number 2 is the living word. So we said point number 1 is the voice of nature. Point number 2 is the living word, who is Christ. The living word, who is Christ. Well, who is Christ? Well, again, what do? We go back to the scriptures. This time we go to the book of John. John chapter 1, beginning in verse 1. So we're going to look at verse 1, verse 2, then we're going to jump over to one other verse beyond that. John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word. Now, let me stop right there for a second, because literally, if we want to deal with this and really dive into it, now we're not going to do that, because this is for the beginning believer, the new believer, or someone who's been in the faith for a while but not had a chance to really dive into the scriptures. John chapter 1, verse 1 is significant for a couple of reasons. That phrase, in the beginning, this is the exact same phrase that's used in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. I'll just stop right there for a second and give you an idea of the beginning that they're referring to. In other words, this is the beginning before anything was created, hence in eternity past. In the beginning was the Word. There's the key. In the beginning was the Word. Now, some people say, well, this word is not Jesus Christ. It's just an aspect. It's figurative language. No, it's not at all. How do we know that? Well, look at the rest of verse 1. And the Word was with God. And the Word was with God. In fact, the word with here, if you grab a concordance, you'll realize the word with here means face to face. You're not face to face with your voice. You're face to face with a person. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, face to face with God. Still not done. Look at the rest of the verse. And the Word was God. In other words, God was face to face with God. The first person of the Trinity, God the Father, was face to face with the second person of the Trinity, Jesus Christ. He was in the beginning with God. Now, for those people who say, well, it's not Jesus Christ. Well, I want you to drop down. Remember, 7:4, we're going to look at another verse. Verse 14. And the Word became flesh. Who's that? Only one person, Jesus Christ. And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we, that's John and the apostles, And we saw his glory, glory as of the only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Who is Jesus Christ? Well, there's a lot of verses within the book of John that we can go to, but I want to go instead to another book, the book of Revelation. Interesting enough, same author. However, this time we're going to go to Revelation chapter 19. Revelation chapter 19. John does a phenomenal job explaining who Jesus Christ is. And I want you to notice what John does here as he talks about the person of Christ. Revelation chapter 19. We're going to begin at verse 11 because that's where the chapter, the paragraph begins. Revelation chapter 19, verse 11. The Apostle John is writing, excuse me, the Apostle John is writing, he says, "And I saw heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on it is called Faithful and True." Remember that? Faithful and true. Think back to John 14, verse 6. We're not going to go there, but I want you to think back to that and look it up later. "And in righteousness he judges and wages war. His eyes are flame of fire, and his head are many diadems. And he has a name written on him which no one knows except himself. He is clothed with a robe dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God." Sound familiar? It's Jesus Christ. It's Jesus Christ. Jump over to verse 16. "And on his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords." I want you to notice something here. I want you to notice all that is capitalized. King of Kings and Lord of Lords. The reality is there's only one Lord. That's God. That's God. Why is this so significant? Well, remember what I just said a few minutes ago? That the voice of nature doesn't tell us all about God. However, who does? Jesus does. For example, Jesus shows us the holiness of God. Jesus shows us and demonstrates the judgment of God. Jesus shows us and demonstrates the mercy of God. And it's Jesus who provides for us the salvation of God. See, what nature was unable to do, Jesus does. Again, that's the harmony of the scriptures and how well they tie and flow together. Let's talk about aspect number 3.